Hey there. Ready to dive into some clearer thinking with me today?
Always up for that.
Awesome. We're going deep on Shane Parrish's book, Clear Thinking, today,
Oh, yeah, it's packed with good stuff about making smarter decisions.
and dodging those mental traps we all fall into.
For sure. Like, Parrish uses all these stories,
Right.
from like battlefield decisions
Yeah.
to business blunders
Totally.
to show how, like, our gut feelings can sometimes really mess us up.
Oh, big time.
He calls these things defaults,
Defaults, okay.
almost like your brain's autopilot just kind of kicks in.
It's like that story about the CEO, right? The one who almost lost everything.
Oh, yeah, totally. Because he was so stuck on his initial investment, even when like everything was saying danger.
It's like you just can't let go of an idea, even when it's clearly not working. Have you ever been there?
Oh, yeah. Like 100%. I think we all have.
So how do we avoid that trap?
Well, Parrish breaks it down into like 4 main defaults:
Okay, 4.
emotion, ego, social, and inertia. And each one can seriously hijack your thinking. Like, if you're not careful.
Gotcha.
Let's start with emotion, right? Think about a time you made a decision in the heat of the moment, when you were like angry or excited.
Yeah, so many times.
Mm.
Like that time I bought those shoes online just because they were on sale.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't even go with anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's emotion taking over. It makes us act without thinking,
And regret it later.
Yeah.
Big time.
For sure. Now, ego, that's all about clinging to what we believe, even when, like, all the evidence says we're wrong. Like that CEO we were talking about couldn't admit he messed up, almost cost him his business.
It's like when you're arguing with someone and you just have to get the last word in, even when deep down you know you might be wrong.
100%.
It's tough to admit when you're wrong, but it's so important.
Yeah, for growth and learning, totally.
For sure.
Okay, then there's this thing, the social default,
Social default. Okay.
which is all about, like, going along with everyone else. You feel the pressure to conform, even if it means, like, going against your own better judgment.
It's like when everyone's ordering appetizers at a restaurant, even if you weren't even hungry.
Exactly. Or you're in a meeting and everyone's agreeing on something, but you have these doubts. That pressure's strong.
So strong.
Yeah.
And then there's that inertia, right?
Inertia, yeah. That's a big one. It's like staying in a job you hate.
Ugh, yeah. Just because starting over is scary.
It's hard. Parrish uses this example about investing in a company, right? And then realizing slowly that the CEO was making bad calls, but it was so hard to pull out, because of that inertia.
It's like being stuck on autopilot, just going through the motions.
Yeah.
But this book isn't just about identifying these defaults, is it? It's about, like, how to actually break free.
Right. It's about building the strength to overcome them.
Exactly.
And Parrish lays out 4 key strengths to work on:
Okay, what are they?
self-accountability,
Okay,
self-knowledge,
got it.
self-control,
And
and self-confidence.
got it. So much self.
Yeah. It's all about mastering yourself.
Okay, let's break it down. Self-accountability, what's that all about?
So it's about owning your actions, no excuses. Parrish tells this story about himself where a colleague basically told him he wasn't pulling his weight. It was hard to hear, but it made him face his, like, tendency to make excuses.
Tough love.
Yeah. He even shared this email from that colleague. It said, "Don't blame the bus for being late. Buy a car."
Whoa.
Talk about a wake-up call, right?
Yeah, it's like taking a responsibility, right? Not playing the blame game.
That's it. It's not about beating yourself up either.
Right.
It's about being honest about your role in any situation and learning from your mistakes.
So it's about focusing on what we can control, right?
Yeah.
Not the stuff we can't.
You got it. And self-knowledge, that goes right along with self-accountability.
Makes sense.
It's about understanding your strengths and weaknesses.
Knowing yourself.
And Parrish says, knowing what you don't know, that's as important as knowing what you do know.
Interesting.
He's got this story about a friend of his, super successful real estate investor. And this friend, he was presented with this amazing business idea, but it was outside his area of expertise.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So he turned it down, just admitted, hey, that's not my thing.
It's like knowing your limits.
Yeah, and playing to your strengths. We can't be good at everything,
Makes sense.
All right, next up, we've got self-control.
This one's tough for me. So many distractions these days.
I hear ya. But self-control, it's about mastering those impulses, those emotions. It's about not letting your feelings, run the show.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are. But
Yeah.
self-control helps us make better choices.
Even when we're feeling tempted or pressured.
Especially then.
Okay, I'm listening.
And last but not least, we've got self-confidence, that inner belief that you've got what it takes, that
Mm.
you can handle the tough stuff.
I love that.
Parrish emphasizes that, true confidence isn't arrogance.
Right, right.
It's about trusting your skills and your value even when you hit setbacks. He talks about how, confidence can even help you see your weaknesses more clearly.
Oh, interesting. So you can actually learn from them.
Exactly. It's about being humble enough to grow.
So we talked about defaults, these strengths to build.
Yeah.
And what I'm loving is how Parrish ties it all to real life. He doesn't just
Yeah.
throw out theories.
No, not at all. He shows how it all works in practice.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
with the defaults, it's like
Yeah.
we all experience them, but never really put a name to them
Yeah, he gives you a language to understand them.
and strategies to overcome them. It's so practical.
Definitely. It's about recognizing where you might be holding yourself back,
Oh, all the time.
out of fear or lack of confidence or whatever it is.
Yeah. Like, how do we actually move past those limitations? What does Parrish suggest?
Well, he dives into recognizing those weaknesses, not to dwell on them, but to manage them effectively.
Okay. How do we do that?
He suggests two main approaches, actually: building on your strengths
Got it.
and implementing safeguards.
Safeguards. Okay.
Yeah. And he uses this example, Michael Abrashoff, this guy who turned around the USS Benfold,
The ship.
the Navy ship. It went from being totally dysfunctional to one of the top performers.
Wow. What did he do? Like, overhaul everything?
Actually, he started by looking at his own blind spots,
Okay.
and seeing things from the crew's perspective. He noticed this thing, like how the officers would cut in line for meals.
Really?
Yeah, it sent this subtle message,
Oh, I see. About hierarchy.
Yeah, so instead of making a big deal about it or issuing orders, you know what he did.
Yeah.
He just started waiting in line himself, like everyone else.
Simple, but powerful.
Totally.
Okay. And what about those safeguards? What are those exactly?
Safeguards are like rules or systems you put in place
Uh-huh.
to help you make better choices kind of automatically.
All right.
It's like setting your future self up for success, basically.
I like that. Future self.
Like, let's say you're trying to drink less soda.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of relying on willpower every time, make a rule. Like, I only drink soda on Fridays. Boom, decision made.
No more agonizing over it.
Right? So much easier.
I like it. What about for, prioritizing tasks? That's always a struggle for me.
Oh, yeah, me too. Parrish recommends giving your best energy to the most important stuff first. He actually used to waste his best hours on email instead of working on his biggest project.
We've all been there. So what did he do?
He got his colleagues involved, turned it into a friendly competition
Oh, I like that.
to see who could resist email the longest.
Smart.
Yeah, turning it into a game kind of helped him break that bad habit.
He also mentions changing your perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like to break free from those defaults.
Absolutely. It's about stepping outside your usual way of thinking. He suggests asking yourself, what would I do if this option just wasn't possible?
Ooh, that's good. It makes you think differently.
Totally. It forces you to consider other solutions, ones you might not have thought of otherwise.
Love it. And what about when we make mistakes?
Ah, mistakes. We all make them.
Yeah, it's inevitable, right?
Totally. Parrish dedicates a whole section to managing them effectively. He breaks it down into 4 steps, actually.
Okay, 4 steps.
First, you got to accept responsibility.
Own it.
Yep. Then, learn from the mistake.
Okay,
Commit to doing better next time.
got it.
And then, repair the damage, if you can.
Makes sense. So it's about learning and moving forward.
Exactly. He also points out that covering up mistakes, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it just makes things worse.
And it prevents you from learning.
Right. So honesty is key, even when it's hard.
It's the only way to grow.
Okay, so we've got these defaults, strengths, and this whole idea of managing mistakes. What else does Parrish cover?
Oh, he gets into this whole framework for approaching decisions, making them in a more deliberate way.
Okay, I like that. Deliberate.
Yeah, so the first step in that is defining the problem accurately, which honestly can be trickier than it sounds.
Right, because if you don't define the problem correctly,
You're solving the wrong thing. He says people and organizations, they often waste time on that,
yeah.
solving the wrong problem, treating the symptom, not the root cause.
Oh, I've totally done that. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bigger issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we define problems better?
Yeah.
Parrish gives 2 key principles, actually. First, take ownership. Don't just passively accept the problem as it's given to you.
Be proactive.
Dig deeper, ask questions, challenge the assumptions.
Okay, so really understand it.
And the second principle, this is huge, identify the root cause.
Yeah.
Don't get sidetracked by those surface level symptoms.
Yeah.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. Keep asking why until you get to the core of the issue.
Get to the heart of it. I like it.
It's key. Welcome back.
Ready to dig into more clear thinking. Last time, we talked about those defaults that mess with our thinking and the strengths we can use to beat them.
Right.
But I'm really curious about Parrish's framework for making better decisions.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
He lays out this like 4-step process.
Okay.
And it starts with like really nailing down the problem.
Defining the problem.
Exactly.
We touched on this a little before, but I want to explore it more. Like, how do we make sure we're tackling the right problem to begin with? It seems obvious.
Right.
But I bet we all try to solve the wrong problem sometimes.
Oh, all the time. It's so easy to jump into like solution mode without really getting what the problem is.
Yeah, totally.
And Parrish, he stresses that defining it correctly is crucial because it sets you up for everything else that follows.
It's like plugging the right address into your GPS.
Ooh, I like that.
If you get the address wrong, you go to the wrong place.
Exactly, no matter how good your driving is. Parrish warns against rushing into solutions before you really pin down what you're trying to achieve and what's blocking you, you know?
Makes sense.
Remember that story about the software glitch at his work?
Oh, yeah, where they spend so much money on overtime.
Yeah, just to reboot the system every weekend, but
Yeah.
they never got to the root cause.
It's like a temporary fix
Totally.
instead of a long-term solution.
They were treating the symptom,
Right.
not the disease.
So how do we not fall into that trap?
He's got 2 key principles, actually.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the first one?
Take ownership.
Ownership. Okay,
Don't just accept the problem how it's presented to you.
right.
Really dig in, you know? Ask questions, challenge assumptions, be proactive.
Don't be passive. Got it. Okay, what's number 2?
Identify that root cause. Don't get distracted by, like, the surface stuff.
Just symptoms.
Yeah, like, think of it like an onion. You got to peel back those layers to get to the core.
I like that.
Keep asking why until you get to the real issue.
Get to the heart of it. I love that analogy.
So once you've got that problem defined,
Yeah.
then what?
Yeah, then what? What's the next step?
It's about exploring solutions.
Okay, solutions.
This is where, like, your creativity comes in. And being willing to think differently, Parrish warns about what he calls binary thinking.
binary thinking. Okay.
It's that tendency to see just 2 options when really there might be tons.
Like black and white.
Yeah, exactly. Or that fight or flight response.
Right. Like you're either going to fight it out or run away.
Yeah, and you might miss other possibilities.
So how do you get out of that binary thinking?
Parrish, he suggests this cool technique. Imagine one of your options is totally off the table, gone, and then ask yourself, what would I do then?
Force yourself to think outside the box.
Exactly.
I like that.
It helps you unlock new ideas, like maybe you're dealing with a tough coworker,
Yeah.
but quitting isn't an option, so then you have to think differently.
Yeah, more creative.
Exactly.
Love that. So once you've brainstormed some solutions, how do you decide which one to go with?
Good question. I think the quality of your decisions, it really depends on the information you use to make them.
Yeah, garbage in, garbage out.
Totally. And Parrish, he spends a lot of time in the book talking about that, the importance of good data. Remember that analogy about junk food?
Oh yeah, comparing secondhand information to junk food.
Right.
We wouldn't eat junk food all the time, so why would we feed our minds with bad information?
Exactly. He calls it the hi-fi principle.
High fidelity, like
Yeah.
good quality sound.
Yeah, exactly. High fidelity information.
Okay, I'm getting it.
It's about going straight to the source whenever you can.
Cutting out the middleman.
Yep. And just like with food, we got to be careful what information we consume. Parrish says to be skeptical of secondhand stuff, especially if it's coming from someone with an agenda.
So think about their motivations.
Right. Are they trying to sell you something, convince you of something, be aware of those biases?
It's like checking the source, right?
Yeah, totally. Look at their expertise, their track record, and see if they have evidence to back up what they're saying.
So it's not just about finding information. It's about evaluating it.
Being critical. Absolutely. He also talks about the value of like expert advice,
Oh, yeah.
especially if you're facing a problem that's really complex or, new to you. It can be super helpful to talk to someone who's already been there. Remember that coding story he told?
Where you finally reached out to someone who'd had the same issue.
Yep. Sometimes we try to figure everything out ourselves when Really, asking for help could save a lot of time and hassle.
Totally. It's like reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. Okay, so you've gathered all this information, right? Explored your options.
Now it's decision time.
Decision time. But Parrish actually has some really cool insights on timing.
Oh, what does he say?
For decisions that are low stakes, like, they're not a big deal.
Okay.
And you can easily reverse them if you need to.
Low risk.
Yeah. He says, just go with your gut, make the call quickly, don't overthink it.
Just do it.
Yep. Learn by doing. But for big decisions.
High stakes.
Yeah, those ones that are hard or even impossible to undo.
Like life-changing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. He says gather as much info as you can and don't decide until the last possible moment.
So be thorough, but don't wait forever.
Right. It's about finding that balance between speed and accuracy.
Gotcha. And for those big high-stakes decisions, Parrish talks about this concept of margins of safety.
Margins of safety, yes, that's so important.
I've heard of that term, but I'm not really sure what it means.
Okay, so margins of safety, they're like buffers you build into your decision.
Buffers. So
To account for, like, surprises, things you didn't see coming.
Oh, so it's like planning for the unexpected.
Exactly. Think of it like insurance.
Insurance. Okay.
You might not need it when everything's going smoothly,
Right.
but it can save you if things go wrong. And he uses this example, long-term capital management.
What was that?
It was this hedge fund back in the 90s.
Okay.
They had Nobel Prize winners on their board, super smart people.
Wow, so they must have been successful.
Actually, they collapsed, big time. Part of the reason was they didn't have those margins of safety built in.
Oh, so even the smartest people can mess up
Totally.
if they don't plan for things going wrong.
Exactly. So how do we build in those margins of safety?
Yeah, what does Parrish suggest?
Well, one thing is to be, like, conservative in your estimates and projections. Don't assume everything will go perfectly according to plan.
So don't be overly optimistic.
Right. And another thing is to diversify your risks.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Spread your bets so if one thing fails, it doesn't take everything down with it.
Makes sense. What else?
He also recommends this technique called shooting bullets before cannonballs.
What does that even mean?
It means testing out a bunch of low-risk options first,
Okay.
before you commit a ton of resources to just one approach.
Oh, so it's like dipping your toe in the water before you jump in.
Exactly. He gives this example of a client who needed to hire a new CEO. Instead of just picking one person, he brought the top 2 candidates in for a trial run.
Oh, interesting.
Give them real projects to work on so he could see how they'd actually perform.
It's like an audition.
Totally. It's a smart way to reduce risk and gather info before you make the final call.
Okay, so you've made the decision. What then?
Well, even with good planning, things don't always work out, you know?
Oh, I know that feeling.
Parrish actually uses this example from the Super Bowl.
Oh, wow. High stakes indeed.
Yeah, he talks about Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll's controversial play call in Super Bowl XLAX.
Okay.
A lot of people criticized it, said it was a huge mistake.
Right.
But Parrish argues that Carroll's thinking was sound. The outcome just didn't go his way.
So sometimes a good decision can still lead to a bad result.
Exactly. You can't always control the outcome.
But you can control the process.
Right. Focus on making good decisions based on the information you have at the time.
So don't beat yourself up if things don't work out perfectly.
He also recommends keeping track of your thought process when you make a decision.
Oh, like a journal.
Yeah, something like that.
No.
So you can look back later and understand why you made that choice. It helps you avoid what's called hindsight bias.
Hindsight bias. What's that?
It's that thing where you look back and think, oh, I should have done things differently.
Right. It's easy to say that after the fact.
Yeah, but at the time you might have had different info, different constraints.
So by writing it down, you can be more objective about your past decisions.
Exactly. So we've talked about defining the problem, exploring solutions, evaluating those options, and actually making the decision. What's left?
Yeah, what's the last step?
Execution.
That you.
Putting it all into action. And Parrish really emphasizes clear communication here.
Okay, communication.
And empowering your team to work independently.
So it's not enough to just make the decision. You got to communicate it clearly.
Exactly. Make sure everyone understands the goals, the desired outcome.
Set those expectations.
He also talks about establishing what he calls tripwires.
Tripwires, like the things that set off an alarm.
Yeah, think of them like early warning signs. If you hit a tripwire, it triggers a specific action.
Oh, I see. So it's like a way to stay on track.
Yep. And to make sure you're not going too far down the wrong path. And then there's this idea of commander's intent.
What's that?
It's like communicating the overall goal,
Okay.
but in a way that allows for flexibility. because things change. Right.
Right. So people can adapt in the moment.
Exactly. You're basically empowering your team to make decisions on the fly without needing constant direction.
Giving them autonomy.
Yeah, exactly. He uses this analogy of Ulysses, from Greek mythology, tying himself to the mast of his ship.
Oh, to resist the sirens.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like pre-committing to a course of action, even when you know you might be tempted to veer off.
So it's about setting yourself up for success.
And recognizing that we're all human. Our emotions and impulses can sometimes lead us astray.
Totally. Okay, so what's Parrish's final point about execution?
It's that execution isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
Always evolving.
You got to keep monitoring your progress, making adjustments as needed, learning as you go.
It's like a continuous feedback loop.
Yep. Embracing that growth mindset.
Always striving for improvement. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. Parrish's framework for making better decisions is full of practical strategies.
Yeah, from defining the problem to managing risk to executing effectively. It's so comprehensive.
And I love how he combines a structured approach with this acknowledgement that life is unpredictable.
Right. He doesn't pretend we can control everything.
But he gives us tools for navigating those complexities.
Totally. What really stands out to me is how he brings in those emotional and psychological aspects.
Me too. It's not just about logic and numbers. It's about understanding ourselves better.
Yeah, it's about making more deliberate choices, but also recognizing our limitations.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. We've talked about those sneaky defaults, the strengths we can build to overcome them, and even like a whole framework for making tough calls.
Right, right.
But now I want to get into what I think is the core of clear thinking,
Oh, yeah. This is good stuff.
what Parrish calls wanting what matters.
Yeah, it's deep. We all get caught up in those external markers of success. Right?
Oh, totally. Money, status, the fancy stuff.
But do those things really make for a good life? That's what Parrish is asking.
He brings up Scrooge, right?
Oh, classic example.
Yeah, the guy who spends his whole life hoarding wealth, only to realize he's totally alone.
Sad, right? It makes you think about what you're really working towards.
Totally. So what's the alternative? If money and status aren't the answer, then what is?
Parrish says those things. They don't always equal real happiness.
Right. It's like you can have all the stuff in the world and still be miserable.
Exactly. He talks about this research from Carl Pilmer, who interviewed all these older people about their life lessons and regrets, and none of them said wealth was the key to happiness.
Really? What do they say?
Their biggest regrets were missed opportunities.
Oh, interesting.
Like time with loved ones, dreams they didn't chase. Makes you think about what you'll really value when you look back on your life.
For sure. It's about figuring out what really matters to you, right? Not what society tells you should matter.
Yes. Aligning your goals with your values.
Right.
And to help you do that, Parrish has this concept. It might sound a little intense at first.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Memento mori.
Memento mori. Okay.
It's Latin. Means remember that you must die.
Whoa, that's heavy.
Yeah, when I first heard it, I was like, whoa, hold on.
Right. But I guess thinking about death can make you appreciate life more.
Exactly. It's not about being morbid. It's about using that awareness of your own mortality to help you live better. Parrish asks us to really picture our own death and think about what we want our legacy to be, what mark we want to leave on the world.
What do we want people to say about us when we're gone?
Yeah, powerful stuff.
It's like a reality check, right? It puts things in perspective.
Totally. When I did that exercise, it shifted things for me.
Really?
Suddenly, material things seemed way less important compared to the people in my life, the experiences I've had.
Yeah, it's about those connections, right? The stuff that truly makes life rich.
Exactly. That's memento mori in action, cutting through all the noise and distractions to focus on what's truly valuable.
Okay, so how do we actually apply this idea to our lives? Like day to day?
Because it's so easy to get caught up in the grind.
Totally. Lose sight of what matters.
Parrish has some suggestions. He says, write your own eulogy.
My eulogy? Okay.
Yeah. Think about what you'd want people to say about you. It's a way to check if your actions are lining up with the legacy you want to leave behind.
Wow, I like that. It's like holding yourself accountable to your own values.
Right. And another thing he says, ask yourself this question regularly. If I knew I only had a year left to live, what would I do differently?
Ooh, that's a powerful question. It makes you prioritize. What would I stop doing? What would I finally start doing?
Exactly. It reminds you that time is precious. Don't waste it on stuff that doesn't bring you joy or meaning.
This has been an amazing deep dive. Clear thinking isn't just about making better decisions. It's about living a better life.
Right. A more fulfilling life, one that's aligned with what truly matters to you.
It's about being more intentional with our choices, big and small.
And remembering, we have more control than we think.
It's about knowing ourselves better and then making choices that reflect that self-knowledge.
And never stop learning.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into clear thinking. We'd love to hear what resonated with you. What are you going to try implementing in your own life? Let us know in the comments below.